Right now we're going to Bill Searcey, former offensive lineman at the University of Alabama, multiple national champs, never lost to Tennessee. He never lost to Auburn, playing for the University of Alabama in one of the greatest dynasties. Bill Searcey, welcome back in the game in Tuscaloosa. Hope you're having a great afternoon, man.
I am, Ryan. It's a beautiful day. And let me first say congratulations on your recent award. I was very excited to hear that and absolutely agree with it.
Little recognition, man. It's always good. Little recognition. So it's always good to be recognized. And
sure.
but we had to go right back to work. Nick Saban only gave us 24 hours to celebrate. So
that's right. Hey, look, always remember this. It's extremely hard to become a champion, but it's even harder to stay a champion. So go on back to work.
Bill, I want to talk to you about a lot of different things, man, but I do thank you for saying that. I want to ask you real quick, what have you learned about hockey? Because you've got a nephew that's playing up in Nashville for the Predators,
right.
And Ryan Hartman. You told me about him many, many years ago as he was working his way up, and he's the right wing for the Predators. What have you learned about hockey and sort of your love that you've developed because your nephew is playing there in Nashville?
Well, let me first give my nephew a quick plug, and that's Ryan Hartman, number 38. Go ahead and get with us and join Team Hartman. But, I've been watching him play hockey since he was about 5 years old, and my son also played for about 6 or 7 years. And, I got to love the game because it's very, in some ways, it's a lot like football. But I just appreciate and athletes these guys are in that they can skate like they do and hit like they do, and they keep coming back and do sometimes 3 games a week during their season. It's an 80-something game schedule plus playoffs, and just really tough human beings. And they just love the game, and I've learned to love it. I still don't know all the rules. I do know you can hit people whenever you want to, and the goalie play was always very interesting to me, Ryan, because I used to equate it to offensive line play, and if you really think about it, and if you ever watch a goalie, they have to be extremely nimble, moving laterally, side to side, of course. They don't move front and back too much, but most of theirs is side to side, and it's hand-eye coordination and, getting knocked down and getting back up. And so I always appreciated that part of the game as far as goalies go. And it's a great game, man. I wish more people in Alabama would start following hockey, and the Nashville Predators are, close to home, 2 hours away. So I invite everyone to join in and become a Predator fan.
And so we're talking to Bill Searcey, which is a former offensive lineman at the University of Alabama. He's got a nephew playing for the Nashville Predators, Ryan Hartman. And I see you putting up social networks posts. And, the one thing that I respect about hockey, Bill, is simply just being able to stay up on skates, man. I mean, to be able to stay up and go backwards on ice skates, it does not look easy, but they make it look easy.
They really do. They make it look too easy. And it's, all those guys out there have been skating since they were little kids. And so it's really second nature to them. I mean, it's as easy as walking like you and I do to them because they do it all the time and they do it so often. And I'll tell you what, whether I had someone that I knew on the team or not, going to Nashville and being in that arena for a game is exhilarating. And as much as we love Bryant-Denny Stadium and 100,000 strong on Saturdays, those folks really get after it 2 or 3 nights a week in that stadium or in that arena. They've been sold out forever. They're sold out for next season already. And, they love their hockey team, and I've come to love them too and join right in with the excitement.
Bill, I want to spend a little time here talking a little offensive line strategy. When you look at the center responsibility, I'm talking about pre-snap. What is the center's responsibility? Go through the basics with us who have never played on that offensive line like you have. Walk us through the center assignments pre-snap.
Well, the center is, he is the quarterback of the offensive line, basically. And a good center really knows every position on the offensive line. And he also recognizes defensive alignments or should and really has to at the level that Alabama plays. And and he's pointing out blocking schemes or calling out blocking schemes, and everybody on the offensive line, depends on him and what he's setting up for them to do. And as we all know, it's a quick split-second decision on, where that middle linebacker is, and then everything falls into place as far as blocking schemes. And so the center has a lot of responsibility, not to mention just getting the ball to the quarterback and the right count. So people don't realize how tough a position it is. I think it's the hardest position on the offensive line. Some would say left tackle, but I still say center is probably the toughest position because you have more responsibility than any other position.
Bill, how can you hear that on the outside? I mean, how can you hear his assignments from the middle if you're playing on one of the tackle spots?
It's tough sometimes. I mean, it's and forgive me. Obviously, I'm not familiar with everything the way they do it in this day and time. But after an offensive line is played together, you and I have talked a lot about in the past couple of years about how the offensive line has to come together and gel, and you almost have to get to know what the other guy's going to do before he does it. And that's kind of when you get into a situation where it's so loud you really can't think, and maybe they're going on a silent count, going off that clap. You almost have to know what you're supposed to do before he even calls it in case you miss it. But you would be surprised how when you're focused in a game, at first the noise is loud, the crowd is in your ear and it's loud, but something happens, and I can't explain what it is, but something happens where all of a sudden the crowd is still loud, but you can hear your teammates making calls and saying things. So I don't know how to explain that, but you do. You can hear it. And then a lot of things they do today are off the silent counts.
So go into this and look at, I mean, to me, when you look at Alabama, a couple of years ago, before Bradley Bozeman stepped in and really anchored that center spot for Alabama for a couple of seasons, Ross Piercebaker got a big look at that center position. About a week, maybe it was 10 days prior to the opening of the season, they switched and moved him back to guard, and they moved Bradley Bozeman inside and said, okay, we're going to keep you there. And you and I talked about, man, that's really difficult with chemistry. But either way, they made it work, and they had success. This spring, it looks like they're going back to a guy like Ross Piercebaker, a veteran guard, to play that center spot.
I don't know what their plan is as far as moving up and down the line, but I have to assume that they're moving Piercebaker back because he's been there before and he's got some experience at the position, and they need a veteran in the position. You've got to have someone to anchor the center of that line. Much like on defense, you really need a guy in the middle, like we had last year with Deron Payne, to anchor that middle because, really that's where it all starts. So I guess in some instances you're willing to maybe give up a little bit on the talent side to put someone in at guard, but that center is crucial, and you really need a veteran in that position, somebody who's had some experience. And that, once again, that's the only thing I can imagine without really knowing the inner workings of what's going on today.
Hey, Bill, let me switch a little gears here and go back. If I say spring practice to you under Coach Bryant, what's the first thing that pops in your head?
The hardest part of the year.
Are you serious?
The hardest part of the year. Winter workouts, what we called winter workouts, which was all the off-the-field training, whether it be running and weightlifting and those kinds of things. Winter workouts were extremely tough, and then spring training was extremely tough because when we did spring training, we had 20 days to practice, and that was 20 days in full pads. And that was 20 days of every drill was wide open, full speed, hitting drill because it's when we worked on fundamentals of the game. We went back to blocking and tackling, all the simple things. And we also was a time when the vacant spots from the year before that had been vacated by upperclassmen were now going to be filled by the younger guys. And so it was a lot of competition between younger guys coming up to fill these spots. Usually by the end of spring, you were pretty solid on what your starting lineups were going to be for the next fall, even though they may not have said that. But going into two-a-days, into summer camp and two-a-days, you were pretty much set. There might have been some changes happen after that, but spring training was extremely hard, Ryan, for us. It was a time of fundamentals. It was nothing fancy. It was, as Coach Bryant used to say, nose to nose, jaw to jaw, and cheek to cheek, and lots of blood flowing and lots of full-speed scrimmages and that type of thing. So, yeah, spring training was extremely hard.
So you're saying it was the hardest time of the year. It's unique to say that. Tomorrow we're going to have a great conversation, Bill, and this is a guy that was been out there since Joe Namath got off the bus. This guy's been one of those officials out there. Eddie Conyers is going to be with us tomorrow. Eddie Conyers is going to spend an hour talking Alabama Crimson Tide football with us tomorrow.
Oh my gosh, that's going to be such a treat for your listeners. Eddie is unbelievable. I see him occasionally when I go to practice now, and it's just hard to believe that he's still out there doing what he does. And man, he could talk for not only an hour, he could talk for 20 hours, and tell you stories. And he's been there. He's been, like you just said, he's been there since Joe Namath got off the bus, and great storyteller. But he's seen a lot of things. He's seen a lot of great players. And when I see him, when it gets into a new spring like this, and I come down to practice and I get to see Eddie, he'll always tell me, "Hey, keep your eye on so and so, or keep your eye on so and so. This kid's a player." And you know what? There couldn't be a better scout around than Eddie Conyers. And not only that, but he's just a joy to talk to. He's funny and a very wise man, and he's been around the Alabama program longer than just about anybody. And you're in for a real treat, Ryan, if you've never spent much time talking to Eddie, I promise. And tell Eddie, Bill Searcey said, quit throwing them holding flags. He'd be throwing flags at practice on holding every time, and I kept trying to tell him that I was not holding, but he never gave up on me.
Well, now he says that Coach Saban says, because, obviously the competition in practice, he says Coach Saban always wants more penalties on the offense because he's a defensive guy. And he said he didn't like throwing flags. And he probably does this to aggravate Nick Saban. But he said he didn't like to throw flags on the offense, and Nick Saban doesn't like that.
He probably is right. I wish I could remember the story. He told me a story one time about Coach Bryant and Coach Bryant calling him, needing some officials for a scrimmage the next day, and it was just hilarious. But Eddie was under Coach Bryant's, I guess you could say, tutelage, just like we were. So he had and has the utmost respect for Coach Bryant, but he will be a real treat to bar for you and your listeners, I promise.
Well, this is how the conversation came up. Last week we were talking with Coach Stallings, and we were just talking and something about the benefit of officials at practice or something. And it came up, and he asked me about Eddie Conyers. And I said, "Oh, sure, he's still out there." He said, "Eddie's still out there calling practice?" I said, "Yes, I see him all the time." Well, about 15, 20 minutes later, Eddie Conyers calls us on our radio show. And he's just talking away, telling us story after story. And I said, "Mr. Conyers," I said, "would you be willing to come in the studio?" So he gave Marquise the number across, and we called him. And sure enough, he's actually going to come in tomorrow and spend an hour with us talking Alabama Crimson Tide football. And, this guy's a historian, and we love, as you know my love of preserving Alabama history. I mean, this guy is, I hope we're recording these conversations, because guys like Eddie, I mean, they're not going to be around forever. Who could connect you with Joe Namath getting off the bus? Not many people can.
No, I'm telling you, it's going to be one for the ages tomorrow, I promise you. And he's also a great speaker. I've heard him speak at events, and he has the place rolling. He's funny, but he's also very factual and knows what he's talking about. And I'll tell you, and I'm going to tell you on the air, another guy that you need to talk to sometime is Coach Gary White. I don't know if you know Coach White.
I do not, but I've heard of him, Yeah,
he was the academic advisor, I guess is what you called it, when I was there. He kept us in the right classes so we could play. And I was at an event with him the other night in Tuscaloosa, a fundraising event for baseball country. And he told me that I didn't realize he had been in Alabama in some kind of official capacity since like 1958. And so he's also another one that's got lots of great history and lots of great stories too. But Eddie's going to be something, I promise you.
Well, I need to get in touch, man. We love the storytelling. I mean, we love to sit around and just talk college football, I mean, I was telling the audience, I said, a lot of times we're talking Coach Bryant with you because you connect us with an era that was great for Alabama. But I said, I'm going to ask Bill about his technique on the offensive line because you always have a chance of explaining it down where we can understand it. It's a complex position, offensive lineman. You guys are a technician of what you guys are able to do, and we always appreciate when you can bring it down to our level where the common folks can understand it a little bit. Right.
Well, I always tell everybody the offensive linemen are the smartest guys on the team. So, it's changed a lot. I mean, the technique has changed. It's night and day than what it used to be. And with us, it was always, run. It was really just a running game, and every pass we threw, which wasn't many, was a play action pass because we really weren't taught how to pass block. We were taught how to knock people off the ball for the wishbone. So now, they throw the ball a lot. They're more an upright stance, and the guys are, they're 6'6" and 6'7", 330. And I mean, we had offensive linemen when I was there. Dwight Stevenson, who's probably the greatest center that ever played college or pro. I mean, Dwight was probably 255 pounds when he played at Alabama, and not much more than that when he played for the Miami Dolphins. So, the game has changed a lot, and those guys are still great offensive linemen today, just different, just different players and much bigger than they were in my day.
Bill, when you watch a game, do you only focus on I know you focus on the ball, but how do you get your eyes away from the technicians in the trenches?
Well, I try to, usually I'm sitting up pretty high somewhere, so I can kind of got an aerial view of the whole field, and I like to sit in the end zone, really, and I like to sit up high in the end zone when I go into the stadium because I can see the whole play develop, and I can watch the offensive line, and after you watch film for a long time and spend lots of hours watching film, you develop the ability to be able to watch the whole game, but also watch those five guys on the offensive line and doing what they do. So I'm sure I'm guilty of zooming in more on the offensive line than other positions, but I try to watch the whole game, especially the defense and how it's developing.
Well, we're going for 6 out of the 10, and according to the experts out in the desert, Alabama's the favorite to win it all again. I mean, I guess that was – I treat that like a breaking story that Vegas has us as the odds on favorite to win the national title. But I guess we've just come to expect that under Nick Saban. 11 years, Alabama at some point will be the number one team in college football for the last 11 years. I mean, things like that are just hard to say. 6 out of the last 10, 5 out of the last 9, but going for 6 out of 10. It's crazy. And I know you were in the dynasty of the 70s, and you look at the numbers that you guys put up. It's fun to be able to look at numbers and get in the raw data when you talk about how great the 3 dynasties have been under Coach Bryant and Nick Saban.
Well, it's fun to have been a part of one era of that dynasty, and now it's fun to be alive to see it happen again. Because I can tell you, when Coach Bryant's dynasty ended, most people would have told you this will never happen again. There'll never be another coach like Coach Bryant. But we've lived long enough to see that wasn't true. That there is another coach like Coach Bryant, and now we all say there'll never be another coach like Coach Saban. But I probably will never see it again, but there will be one day. But he's just a unique person, a unique human being that strives for excellence and that is not willing to give at all or compromise at all, whether it be his players on the field or his players off the field. I think what he does teaches his kids about how to act and how to be men and how to grow up is as important as what he teaches them on the football field. So I think we've all lived to see something very special, and we should enjoy it as much as we can and for as long as we can. And gosh, I hope he wins 5 or 6 more before he retires.
Well, and Lane Kiffin told us last week, somebody that's worked with Nick Saban, and he was very complimentary of what he was able to learn under Nick Saban. He's applied there at Florida Atlantic. He said he would not be shocked if Nick Saban had 10 more years left in the tank. And I followed it up, and I said, Lane, are you pulling our leg? He said, no. He said, it's like Tom Brady. The guy stays in physical, top-notch shape. He said he's not your typical 66-year-old that we typically see. He went into the explanation of he's got 10 more years left in the tank. If we just get 7 of that, I'll be happy.
Oh, I will be too. And physically you can tell he's very fit, and obviously mentally he's extremely sharp. And always, I think that Coach, and I don't know this to be a fact other than what I see of him publicly, but I think Coach Saban's a guy who's never satisfied with his own development. I think he constantly tries to become a smarter coach and a smarter person, and I think he studies it hard at everything he does. And I've heard him talk a lot about motivation and how to motivate people. And I think he studied that. I think he studied it under some psychologists and some guys that are excellent and are experts in motivation of people. And I think he continues to learn, and I think he continues to improve all the time, because he's one of those guys, I think that, I mean, he said it, he hates losing a lot more than he likes winning. And, I think great coaches are like that. I mean, I think Coach Bryant was like that. So, man, we need to really enjoy this dynasty because we've got something special going on. And I love being part of a team and following a team that everybody's chasing, that everybody wants to be like. I like that.
I do too. Bill Searcey, connect with him on the Twitter account. Bill Searcey, you can find him on Facebook. Bill Searcey 1, as you're planning your speaking engagement. Bill does a lot of speaking engagements throughout our area, whether it's a high school team or going out to a local church. As he mentioned a couple of weeks ago, he was here for Baseball Country, which does a tremendous job down off of Romulus Road here in Tuscaloosa County. He's an author of High Tide, A Story of Football, Free Fall, and Forgiveness, a guy that can share his testimony and certainly connect with your audience. Connect with him on the Twitter account. Bill Searcey 1, former Alabama offensive lineman, multiple national championship guy, 3 SEC titles, never lost to Auburn, never lost to Tennessee, 2 national titles in the University of Alabama in 78, 79. Bill, as always, thank you again for your time, man. I hope you have a great afternoon. I appreciate you, man.
Hey, thank you, Ryan. And I want to say one more plug. I want to invite everybody to join Team Hartman now, Predators number 38.
Hey,
love you guys. Talk to you soon.
No doubt, man. Hey, listen. I told a friend of mine that's a physician here in Tuscaloosa, he was going to a Predators game, and he said, man, I don't know anything about hockey. I said, here you go. Here's your connection. I said, pull for Ryan Hartman because that's Bill Searcey. He said, Bill, the guy that's on your show? I said, yeah, that's his nephew. And he goes, no, you're pulling my leg. I said, no, I promise. Go look it up. He's from Hilton Head, South Carolina, and he's playing with the Nashville Predators, so we have a tie there to the NHL. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, brother. I'll talk to you soon.